Yeah. So I think the video will start with me walking into frame and be totally unedited out, cold open style.
Perfect.
So we go from there. I'm also going to get up my notes because I wasn't at this tournament, so I need to remember what questions to ask you. Do you want to introduce yourself?
I can do that. Hello, and welcome to This Machine Kills Fascist Netrunner.
Yeah.
He's not Yeti, and I'm CobraBubbles, also known as Rowan. You might know me from all sorts of places. I volunteer with NSG. I do a bunch of stuff in the UK tournament circuit. I've been involved in UK regionals. I'll be judging East Anglian regionals in a week and a bit's time. You should come.
Buy tickets?
Buy your tickets now, yeah. There's not very many left.
No, but there's enough if you want to come.
Great. And I, not to bury the lead, won a regional at the weekend just gone. So that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. So yes, this was Scottish regionals, which is quite far away. It's the furthest regionals from us. Is that true?
Yeah, it's further than Bristol, right?
It probably. How many hours did it take you to get there?
6 and a bit, but that's because the train companies hate people who want to go from East Anglia to Scotland specifically, and so you have to change at Peterborough or Grantham, and wherever you change, there's always like the best part of an hour between your train coming out of East Anglia and your train going up to Scotland, because they just don't bother to sync up their services whatsoever. So in terms of actual travel time, it's more like 5.5.
Okay, that's not too bad.
Yeah.
And was the travel fine apart from that?
Travel was fine. Yeah, it was nice. I went up on the Thursday beforehand. Trained down to Peterborough, sat in Peterborough Station for an hour, which is a thing I've done far too many times in my life.
Yep.
Got on the train up to London. I was playing some Balatro on my Switch.
Very nice.
Made a mistake in my Balatro and was like, this is annoying. Put my Switch down for a second, looked at my phone, and I had a Slack message from one Jono.
Oh, yeah.
Of UK Meta and Cobra designing fame.
Mm-hmm.
Who said, this is a weird question. Did I just see you get on the such and such train? I was like, yeah, you did. He was like, do you want to come and hang out? And so we hung out, and that was nice. Nice to have somebody to chat to. We played a bit of Netrunner on the train. Yeah, it was good.
What decks was he playing? Now you got to do a report on the train games.
He had amusingly, he had 2 decks previously published by me.
Nice.
In the tournament, variants of Asmari and Toshiko.
Of course, yeah, which is what he played at Bristol.
Which is what he played at Bristol, exactly, and the decks he's been playing, with a few tweaks. We played a couple of games. I had PD with me as well, so we played Solstice into my PD and my latter days Asmari.
Fantastic.
And yeah, it was enough. But my main takeaway was, he said he decided to come to Scotland because he wanted to get the playset of all the alt arts that we got for regionals. And I thought, got him. This is why we made 3 different alt arts, right? Is to try and encourage people to collect them all.
Yeah.
At least one case it did work.
Yes.
This will come up again later, foreshadowing. I got to Scotland and I was staying with my friends Tony and Helen Negos, who are old Game of Thrones players. People I know from my Game of Thrones days.
Your history.
People don't know I have a past in the Game of Thrones card game. I've met Tony on the Card Game DB forums circa 2014.
I've seen the Card Game DB forums.
They were great. For a while, they were a wonderful place. I have some blogs on the Card Game DB website that have hundreds of thousands of views because they've been viewed by spam bots so many times.
You put that on your CV.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, Tony and Helen, lovely people. I see them about once a year because they live up in Scotland. So I took the opportunity to crash with them.
Very
and
nice.
hang out while I was up there for Netrunners. So I went and, I got in, Helen opened a bottle of wine and we shot the shit for about 6 hours or something. And then
Did you play any games?
Went to bed at like 2 a.m. On that night, no. On the Friday, we played a game called Campaign Trail, which is about the US election.
Yeah.
Of the US election.
Interesting.
But we played it 3-player, so it introduces the Libertarian.
do they start with no resources and have no chance of winning?
No. They're a real party in the fiction of the game. I was the Democrat. I had blue donkeys. Tony was the elephants. He had the elephants. The Republicans with red elephants.
Yes, yeah.
And Helen was the Libertarians, who obviously have yellow hedgehogs.
Of course. Can't do the yellow snake because that would be a little too much. So okay.
Yeah, there's an expansion where you can play the Green Party as well.
Oh,
I don't know how that works. Anyway, it was a bit of a laugh, and in the end, Tony won the election. Well, he won the electoral college, by 4 electoral college votes because he swung Rhode Island right at the end.
Wow.
So never before has Rhode Island been so pivotal in the history of an American election, as far as I'm aware. Anyway, that was fun. That was the main game we played because it took hours and hours. But yeah, we spent a lot of time just catching up, chatting shit.
It's been ages since I played one of those like board games that takes hours and hours.
Yeah, this is our thing. Me and Tony had. If I was not playing Netrunner that weekend, we would have played 2 or 3 more.
Yeah.
Huge board games. That's generally what we do. It was a good time.
Nice. And so was that all of your Friday was doing that and drinking more bottles of wine?
Basically, yes.
Did you go out on the town? Did you meet other netrunners, or did you just hang out with your friends?
Just hang out with Tony and Helen. That's basically what I was there for socially.
Pretty nice.
And yeah, it was good. Yeah, generally, I've spent a lot of time in Edinburgh because of Tony and Helen, but the vast majority of that time has been spent in Tony and Helen's house and not exploring the sights of the lovely city of Edinburgh.
I mean, yeah, if that's sometimes that's like better than going around exploring around a city. When I went to Barcelona, when I went to Italy, I didn't leave the house, so like very fair. What's is the tournament in Edinburgh proper, or like how does it work?
So the tournament was at Tabletop Scotland, which is a convention, which Tony and Helen had previous history with, so we discussed that. Apparently, it was first run in Perth on a like ice rink out of season. So like on basically a big concrete floor where there would usually be ice, and which is apparently still quite cold.
Which is the off season for an ice rink?
The summer.
The summer's the off season.
Yes.
I wasn't sure if they like when it's cold out they make it warm in, but
no. But yes, this time it was at the Royal Highland Centre, which is a big convention centre type of thing just outside of Edinburgh.
So is it like public transport away?
Yeah. So, well, if I'm going to get into how my Saturday went.
Yeah, let's move on. Have you got anything else from before the Saturday?
Well, I should mention the thing that happened when I woke up on Friday morning, which is that I woke up and I was idly thinking about nothing in particular, and then I remembered Jono's aforementioned comment about collecting all 3 kinds of alt arts, and I was like, that's funny, because that means, if I'm remembering right which tournaments John has been to previously, that means that he needs to get wage workers from this tournament. I'm pretty sure that I've been given a box of opera researchers to bring up for the prizes. So I checked, and I did have a box of opera researchers, and then I checked Always Be Running, and it was advertising wage workers.
No.
And so we all had a bit of a panic at Regionals HQ, and so I spent about an hour and a half messaging around you and Rora, the tournament organizer for Scotland, and MCG, the tournament organizer for the place where those operas that I had with me were supposed to be going. So that was all a bit concerning, bit of a shame.
We'd also just had I'd forgotten the prizes for Aldershot, so
Right.
2 in a row that we'd managed to.
Right, and then this ties into my Saturday morning because the public transport situation was get the tram out of Edinburgh to Ingliston Park and Ride, and then the Royal Highland Centre was just over the road. So I thought, perfect, and there was signs, maps for walking. I was like, well, fine, I can walk to the Royal Highland Centre. That's not a problem. As it turns out, the Royal Highland Centre is not, as I'd imagined, one building, but a complex of buildings and like sports fields and shit. It's like massive.
And you were going.
I was going to the total opposite side, where the convention Tabletop Scotland was being held. So I started walking out the place, followed some signs, and then I saw some people with like D20 t-shirts on. I was like, right, here are some nerds. They're going to the convention. I'll follow them. And then I just kept following them, and on, walking for like 2 miles. I eventually got there.
How on time were you?
Less on time than I had planned to be, but not late.
Okay.
But I did feel like I was in a bit of a rush by the time I got there, and I was sweaty and warm because I'd walked a much further than I had expected to, carrying a bag full of playmats.
Yeah. There's a lot. They are heavy when you're carrying 9 of them at once. Or something.
Yes, yeah. And my own stuff, obviously. So yeah, that was all a bit much, and I got there feeling lightly stressed, and a kind of less bad repeat of our Aldershot experience.
Yeah.
I was late and there was a prize mix-up, but neither of them were nearly as severe. So I got my deck list written, and by the time I had one rolled around, I was feeling pretty okay. But yeah, the con was kind of cool. If you're into doing convention stuff, there's a bunch of stalls. obviously selling all sorts of game-related things. There was a bunch of tables in an upstairs room where people were doing RPG one-shots and stuff.
There
And
was
there
a
were
big
loads of open
Arkham.
space. There was a big Arkham event, which is like twice as big as the Netrunner event, really big Arkham event.
Wicked.
And there was like a Star Wars Unlimited event where my friend Liam came third. That was fun. And there was some Locana and just a bunch of like open play tables in this what amounts to basically an aircraft hangar. In fact, it was quite near the airport, so it probably did used to be.
Yeah.
Which is just like one of those spaces that's indoors but so big you like feel a breeze like it's outdoors, and with like big spotlight lighting and stuff. So kind of a weird, like timeless, weird space.
Okay.
And yeah, it was a convention, so there were food vans that there were like massive queues for all the time, and the food was like a little more expensive than you'd like, but mostly okay.
But good vibes. It was fun.
It was fine, yeah. I'm not generally a convention person. If you were a convention person and you were like, I'm during my Netrunner lunch break, I'm going to go to this store and pick up this RPG book I've been looking for or whatever, then that would be great for you.
Sure.
And that is not me. So I was just like, this is a tournament.
I'm going to queue for some food.
I'm going to give some food. Yeah.
And so you talked about handwriting your deck lists. What were your 2 decks?
I was playing Lat and Asmari.
My God.
I know.
Who could have guessed?
So the Asmari is quite infamous by now. People know about it. I've just published write-ups for both of these last night at time of recording, so people can go and view them if they would like to. So the Asmari deck is a variant of the kill deck that's become known as Asmari, kind of.
You're pulling a face. I
don't really like the name. People are calling it like Asmari, as in EA Asmari.
Asmari,
hard to say out loud. Makes sense when you write it down. But it's re-education combo kill.
I think Asmari works because it's a bit like the tech thing.
Email.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but so is everything. It's not 1999. We don't have to do that anymore. Electronic is not like a big designation.
It's electronic Asmari.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a combo kill deck. People know about it by now.
And you played some tweaks. The tweaks were F2P.
Yeah, so different ice. I played Messages for F2P over Piranhas and Sorevna.
And Messages, I get it just ends the run as opposed to being able to nuke go through it. F2P, it bounces cards to hand and they can always break it.
They can always break it for 2 credits if they're not tagged.
If they're not tagged,
which
I guess we can tag them.
We can tag them. We have ping. So the idea behind F2P is Sorevna doesn't really do anything if you don't have Piranhas, in the sense that the runner can just run through it with basically no cost. Like sometimes it will make a difference to them dying to punitive.
Yeah, sometimes it allows you to deny lap draw and like other bits, but yeah.
But mostly it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So having changed that Piranhas, I wanted to do a different sentry.
And there's only one other good sentry.
Basically, in faction, there's only one other good sentry, and it's FTP, which we could try when we were playing Piranhas, and then we realised it gave runners a way to put a card back in their hand, so that they could run through Piranhas.
And Duo is the same, right? Is it?
Duo is just bad, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Duo has the fake stop SMC text on it.
Yes.
Except it doesn't stop SMC because you res it. Then they can crack their SMC. Then they encounter it in the text files. So it just is one of those FMG cards that is designed to solve a problem and it just doesn't solve that problem.
Yeah, makes sense.
Duo not good. FTP is fine. Like if you have a remote that is ping on the outside, FTP in the middle, messages on the inside, it requires all 3 breakers unless they have some other kind of trick because they need a barrier breaker for ping. Then they're tagged, so they can't break FTP without inherently being a sentry breaker. And if they don't have a sentry breaker, you bounce their code gate breaker, so they can't get through messages.
That makes perfect sense.
So
at the other time you played 1 Neurospike and you've been playing that for a while.
Yeah, so I went to the 1 Neurospike, which I also played at Nottingham. The logic there basically being people were taking very narrowly for Dupestad.
Yeah.
They were worried about the deck.
Calderas and Respirosites and...
I'm also playing more copies of Pinhole.
Yeah.
Partly because they're afraid of this deck and because PD is very good and Pinhole sometimes beats Dupestad, but it never beats Neurospike. There also generally is less burner and less more around than there was at EMEA when we first built the deck and decided that Neurospike wasn't what we wanted. So broadly speaking, it's it does the same thing as Dupestad. It costs you 1 less influence, There are some spots where it's better against, for example, Respirosites. Like if you install a Respirosites and then they kill you with Neurospike, you've just had the worst day of your life. I mean, can you imagine? I almost wanted to get paired against Augustus. I don't know if he was still playing it, but he was playing it Aldershot just to do that, but I didn't. More on him later. Yeah, the Neurospike, it also makes it easier for you to kill a runner with a larger hand size, like an Essa with a Marrow installed, for example, has 7 cards, because you're doing 3 damage rather than 1 after you've fired Re-Education.
It makes perfect sense, but you kept both because you wanted the flexibility of either.
Exactly, yes. Also because the other card I'm playing is red level clearance.
Of course!
Which makes Dupestad into more of a combo.
Yeah, I really like doing that.
Yeah, you can kill with a like when they're not expecting you, basically, when you don't have an upgrade in the remote, you can still kill them off of re-educationing your, not re-educationing, red level clearancing your Dupestad into play.
Yeah.
And it just gives you a bunch of other like fun lines.
I think it all makes sense. Yeah, I don't. It's one of those weird ones where I don't think you can play the RLC without the Dupestad, but you can't play the RLC and play 2 Dupestad.
Right.
But yeah, makes sense. And then Lat, because you played kind of both of these decks at Nottingham, but you dropped, or
no? So at Nottingham, I was 5-2 and bubbled.
Oh yeah, with
Lat and Asmari, but quite a different version of the Lat.
That was when you were still on Hermes and stuff.
I was on Hermes, I was on the Turbine Rig, and now I'm not on either of those things.
Now you're on Anacam and Kobe?
Yeah, to Kobe, a custom rig inspired by Ashbo, our teammate, shout outs. Who inspired, I was complaining about none of these rigs I have break Bran efficiently. Like, Cleaver Turbine doesn't do it, Propeller doesn't do it, repeatedly at least, and Pressure Spike is actually just worse than Cleaver Turbine.
Yeah.
Even though it's supposed to be good at breaking big barriers. And Alex reminded me that Takobi existed, and Takobi plus Cleaver is actually a good way to break Bran repeatedly. Yeah. And given that PD is such a big deck, and HB in general is so widely played at the moment, and even like Ag Infusion is playing Bran, or like Boto, which is basically Bran.
That makes sense.
I wanted to have a way to break 6-strength barriers repeatedly, and so Takobi Cleaver was like the best idea in the changed deck, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So at Nottingham, I bubbled, and at Aldershot, I got ill halfway through the tournament. I wasn't playing Asmari there; I was playing Latin PD.
Of course, you're on PD, weren't you?
Yeah. But yeah, I had to drop from that tournament. So this was. Oh, also, I forgot an important piece of context, which is that this is the last tournament that I'm going to be playing in this year.
Of course.
Because I'm judging at East Anglian Regionals next week. I'm judging at Worlds. I'm judging at UK Nationals.
So this was your last time to win a mat, as opposed to just get one for volunteering.
Yes. Yeah. Again, more on that later. But mainly it was my last time to like try and do something with this lap deck I'd been working on since Italy, basically for like 2 months, which I was quite pleased with where it turned out.
Yeah, you had to get a win under the belt.
But yeah, there's a lot more about the lat deck. I went into like really extensive detail about the lat deck in the write-up. So the thing I will say is that like the most recent changes at the time of this tournament were cutting Burner, bringing in falsified credentials as my last econ card, and playing a one-of Muse. All of which turned out to be good decisions.
Did the falsified actually do stuff?
The falsifieds were great.
Oh my
they were
God.
really good. It turns out when your game plan is like, I'm just going to lock this remote for most of the game and then catalog her a couple of times at some point to win. Knowing which cards are the upgrades and where they are is like huge. And I'm on 3-pin-hole. I think 3-pin-hole is just sick.
I watched the Soccer's like recap thing recently, and he was talking about how like the thing against thing against PD is just like the thing of do I pinhole the mana garb or the Anoetic, right? Like that's the big deciding thing, and what lines can you take to figure that out? And I guess play that's one of them.
Yeah, that's encouraging to hear. I haven't watched that video, but that's basically the same conclusion I'd come to about the matchup, right? Is that like, and this is again the reason I wanted to be able to break Brown repeatedly was because of having to run through it multiple times because of Void or Skunk. And having 2-pinhole and 2 falsified makes it much less likely that you have to do that, but also I can do it if I need to.
It does reinforce the thing that like I think Kikai often says about EA Sports testing, which is that we just test into Hosh and PD.
Like, yeah, but look, if you've got a deck that can beat either of those, it's still pretty good. You know?
Yeah.
But this is the thing about LAT, right? Is that because like I'm playing LAT, I'm playing Anacam, I'm playing 3 Stone Ship because, as most people have deduced, that's the right thing to do in pure heavy meta, and also I have a lot of charge targets, like with Takobi.
Yeah.
as well on top of the revolver and propeller and cataloger. So stone ship's just good. So with all of those things and like SMC and good economy, like you're just good against any like random Corp deck that somebody might have. Somebody just brought their own variant of PE, or they've decided to play like a MBN taggy deck, even though that's not like that hot at the moment. Like you are just well positioned against most things that are random. You can just figure out as you go and have the tools to succeed. But the thing that Cheb has historically been worst at is the like really focused rush decks that are just going to get it done, and you have to like deal with it.
And that's what the lat deck is so good.
That's what like the newer lat decks are now starting to solve, and my way of trying to solve that was playing Kobe and Phosphate.
I think that's fun. That's good.
Yeah.
So double-sided Swiss.
Yeah.
5 rounds of Swiss, and then double a limb, cut to top 4.
Correct, and 25 players in the field. So the early math was if you lose 2 off your games, you're in. If you lose 3 games, you're in the bubble.
Okay. And so round 1, you played against. I've written it all down. Do you remember who you played against round 1?
Yes, I played against a lovely man called Sean, who I've not met before, who had come down from Dundee. Quite a few people had come down from Dundee. That's where I believe that's where Roro, who was organising the tournament, was from, and there were quite a few others. They seem to have a nice healthy matchup there.
Nice.
And Sean was really lovely. He teaches law up in Dundee. He's moving to New Zealand to teach law there soon. So we had a nice chat about that. And he was just really like charming, a nice person to play with. He's also like, so I'll start. So our first game, I'm playing Lat into Restoring Humanity.
Yeah.
This is a matchup that we have played a lot.
Yes.
You've played a lot of Restoring Humanity this summer. And that I overall feel that Lat is favoured in. I think you'd agree as the RH player, but is still always like kind of hard to play.
Yeah,
you got difficult decisions.
Yeah.
In any RH game. And Sean was the only Jinteki player in the field.
Oh, wow.
But this man's built to play Jinteki because he has the chat.
Oh.
He talks and like runs the game with his like talk. He's just, if you do something here in the game, he'll like comment on it a little bit, or he'll be like, you start doing something, he'll be like, oh, you're gonna do this in a kind of way. It's just chatty and nice, but it's also like he's just in the game playing a little bit of misdirection in a way that I thought was really like good, really effective. Basically, the way the game goes is I steal the first Regenesis out of the remote with some SMC shenanigans in the way that Shaper will do. I feel pretty good about that. I think I tank an Anansi in the process to do it, but that's not the worst. And then he pushes the second Regenesis more or less immediately. Or what I read is probably being the second Genesis, and on the basis that it might be the second Genesis, the reason I have that read is because he's also installed a card outside of the remote, which looks to me like Spin Doctor. So my theory is he's gone for second Genesis here, but he's got the Spin Doctor backup in case I decide to run archives. Yeah. Because at this point I've got quite a lot of money, and he's gonna struggle to pivot me. So I run the archives. He pops the Spin Doctor, shuffles away, presumably a 3-pointer, and then his next turn is double advance the Regenesis, ice archives, and then discard down because he drew with Spin Doctor. Yeah. So I'm looking at that thinking, okay, I'm now very, very sure that this is Regenesis because of the Spin Doctor play. And he's probably put a new Agenda in archives. And what I have not drawn yet is my Sentry Break. Okay. So I'm like, I don't really want to run through that Anansi again. Yeah. Right.
But the Ice on archives could be anything.
Could be anything. So I draw up, trying to find the SMC or Sentry Break and don't find it. And I run archives on, I want to say click 3.
With like 7 cards in it?
With a bunch of cards in it. Like 6, I think. And then, and a stone chip.
Oh yeah, you wouldn't have got that draw, but yeah.
Yeah. And a stone chip. And then he raises Saisantan.
It's the one that can get you sometimes.
Which is bad for me. But I have 6 cards, so I can't die.
Yeah.
And I end up on 2 cards in hand after that. Okay. Maybe I did have 7. Anyway, I have 2 cards after the Saisantan, that's for sure. So I've got 2 cards from Saisantan, I've got Stone Chip right? So I can get up to not quite enough cards.
Well, you can probably, if you use Stoic, you
Is that
can
right?
probably get to 6. The details aren't important.
The
The
details-
storytelling.
The important part is I'm doing the math on the archives. Oh yeah, that's right. I can get up to no, I didn't have a stone chip in play, but I can get up to 3 cards, so I can't edit 1 punitive.
Yeah.
No stone chip, but and I have a point already, right? It's a storm genesis.
Yeah.
So you can't feed me 6 points in archives.
Yeah.
And I'm doing the math, and I'm like, okay, I've got a decent chunk of money. He can't afford to double punitive me, even if he gets YDL.
Yeah.
And draws a bunch of cards off of Bacterial. So I'm thinking I don't think I can die, and then I realise if he puts the last Regenesis into archives and I steal 4 points, then I can die to 1 punitive.
That's how I died to Bridgman at EMEA.
Right. So I jack out. I can't take that risk. I think about it for a while because I'm like, that's not very likely. I have 1 Regenesis. I'm pretty sure that's another Regenesis in the remote. So he's got the 1 more Regenesis in the we've not played in very long a game, so there's still 25 odd cards in his deck. But he's still looking at close to a 1 in 3 to find the Regenesis.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Because the deck's small. So
one of those ones where they can always have it.
Right.
It's so.
So I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, okay, I think I can just let him score this Regenesis. I'm going to draw up and find my Sentry Breaker over the next couple of turns and then just lock them up for the rest of the game and feel good about it.
Yeah.
So I do that. I draw my last click. He goes advanced score Regenesis, hand save review, install a new card remote.
Did he score 4 points of the Regenesis?
Yes, he pulled the 3-pointer out of archives.
Yeah.
It was a Bacterial, so I sort of made the right decision.
Oh, so now he's threatening Regenesis again.
He is, and this is the largest mistake I make all day, which is that I don't register these threatening Regenesis.
Okay, it makes sense, right? Because it's 2 clicks.
Because it's literally, and also this is turn 6 or something, 7. We've not for an RH game. This has been a quick.
Yeah.
And for him to have this, he has to draw on all 3.
Just and 3 3-pointers.
3 3-pointers. Yeah. To make this.
Or 2 3-pointers, but yeah.
No,
3.
Because he shuffled one.
Yeah.
Right? So it was 3. He has to draw on 3 of each. And so I'm and also on the draw last turn, I drew DJ. So I'm like, okay, from my perspective, with my game plan of, I just need to take a 1 recovery turn and then lock them out for the rest of the game. I've got DJ.
Yeah.
He doesn't have very much money to protect HQ. This is going to be my best card for refueling. I'd also lost both my catalogers in the process of taking all the damage.
Okay.
So I could get catalog back. I felt really good about having this DJ. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to take a setup turn that's going to allow me to deploy the DJ next turn, start recovering everything, and I take my setup turn and I say, and I'll drop a lat, and he says, I wouldn't worry about that.
That's pretty good.
Which is very funny, and then scored a Genesis and had 8 points in the end.
Wow.
And it's literally wow, fuck me. The chance of that happening very low. The mistake was not that I didn't interact with it, because I still didn't have my Sentry Breaker. I was going to run to Anansi again on the very slim odds of him having or run Sice and Duncan and Archive.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I didn't really have a good out there. The mistake was that I didn't think about it even. I didn't even register. So I lose the game, and I'm kind of shell shocked.
Yeah.
A bit shit. This is not a nice way to lose your first game of the tournament.
Because if you spotted it and you'd gone, oh yeah, I might lose to that, and then he does it, you go, he drew the nuts. Okay, fine. Whereas when you don't see it coming, you feel like, fuck, could I have done something? Did I make a mistake here?
Exactly. Yeah. And so of course, the first thing I'm thinking is, I'm put my cards away, feeling a bit shell shocked, thinking man, this is a really tight tournament. I can afford to lose at most 2 games.
Yeah.
If this is the game that means I don't make the cut, I'm going to be sad about that.
Yeah.
It feels like I was really close to being on top of it in a matchup where I've had a lot of practice.
I think yeah. That's why Irish is good. But...
which is again the deck is good. It will do that to you, some amount of the time. But anyway, then I'm okay, going to the most bit, and then I play. I get out my Asmari deck, and Sean gets out Essa.
Yeah.
Essa for Asmari is has historically been one of the trickier matchups. Our win rate is generally quite good against Essa, but just dealing with sabotage when your whole deck is about drawing a bunch of cards and assembling specific cards. You're trying to do both of those things. Sabotage is a real issue for you.
Yeah,
it's less bad for my deck now for 2 reasons, but you had a thought.
Yeah, I mean, so historically, I think that the Essa matchup is one that is manageable. I was playing this at the pub on Monday night, and it was one of those ones where, as Essa, we were able to force reses, we were able to do it. But once the Corp does set up the combo, getting through a triple-iced server on turn 4 or 5 or whatever it is actually just incredibly hard ask for the Esser list.
Yeah.
So it's like, can you delay this long enough to do a big old sabotage turn and win? Which is like a hard thing for the Esser to do.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's been my experience as well. And I think actually, yeah, two things about my current deck make the Esser matchup much better, and I think actually like quite favoured for the Osmari. One of them is that degree mill, right? So we have half our points. If they get sabotaged to archives, there are some spots where the Esser just can't steal them.
Yeah.
Because they generally don't have very many installed cards, and sometimes they have to shuffle away like a Marrow, at which point they're at huge risk of getting punitive off of that steal. Right?
Yeah. And if you get rid of your breakers, if you like everything on the table is apart from Ghost Tongue probably is like important.
Yeah. So degree mill makes the matchup feel a lot like you feel a lot less safe sabotaging from R&D if you have to do that, and also you feel better sabotaging from HQ because generally our approach to the matchup has been sabotage from HQ wherever you can, because what you don't want to do is sabotage your kill combo cards and not be able to kill the run.
Yeah, losing Dupestad hard.
Right. But sabotaging from HQ has the downside of, well, but my best ice requires me to have a bunch of cards in there.
Yeah, everything wants you, and you don't know.
Except that I'm not running piranhas anymore, so that doesn't matter.
And you're also on Neurospike, you're on a Marrow.
And that's exactly what happened in this game. So in this game, I pushed the combo on about turn 4 or something, and Sean has a Marrow, and is like looking, and I have, because of sabotaging and stuff, I have like 3 or 4 cards in my hand or something, and Sean is like draws up to the point where he has like 2 more cards than me, and feels pretty good about the fact that he's not going to die to Dupestad. But it turns out the remote is not Hollow Man re-education Dupestad, it's Hollow Man re-education. So I just 6 advance to re-education, score it, and Neurospike it, and deal enough damage, even though I didn't have a huge hand.
Makes sense.
To finish it off. So
1-1 at the end of round 1.
1-1 at the end of round 1. Neurospike did something which was fun.
Yeah.
And
lots of the changes feel good there.
Yeah, a lot of the changes feel good. Agreed. I'm still feeling a little bit like salty, not salty, but like I'm happy about the first game.
Yeah.
Round
2, you play against another Rowan.
So round 2, I have the Rowan Mirror. Very exciting, and actually really exciting because I've met a bunch of other people with my name in my life. It's not that uncommon. I'm also given to understand that like it's a name that kind of has a Gaelic prominence, so like, provenance rather. So like it's like
you bring it.
Like, I know a couple of Welsh Rowans. I know that it's a name and that it's a variant of it exist in Ireland. So my assumption was that there would be more Scottish Rowans.
Yeah,
I didn't know that for sure. Maybe I'm wrong because we sat down and I obviously opened with the inevitable small talk of like, hey, I'm registered under my fake name today, but my name is also Rowan. And he's like, no way. It's incredible that you should say that. And I'm like, what? Why is that so exciting? I'm just doing some small talk here. And he's like, I was literally having a conversation with someone at work like the other day about how wild it is that I've never met anyone called Rowan apart from myself. And I was like, my guy, I'm so happy to be there for you. This is great. So we had a really good laugh about that. Rowan is really nice. Really good chat. And then then I played 2 really rude games of Netrunner, where he was Steve and Steve with 0. I was Asmari, and I had the draw to play a slow game where I just double iced HQ, double iced the remote. He couldn't do anything. Killed him with the combo.
PD?
And then, he was PD and flooded really, really hard. Like, he mulliganed, and his first turn was draw, install remote, upgrade remote. And so my read is, okay, this is flood. He's trying to, like, cheese a Luminal out on me or something, or, like, cheese out Rashida with an upgrade because he didn't have an ice for it. So I ran the remote. I think I played Gamble first. No, I don't importantly. I just click 1, Dirty Laundry the remote.
Dirty Laundry?
He reses mana gun. Yeah, if it's void and he's discarding 2 cards up his flooded hand, that is absolutely fine. So I Dirty Laundry the remote, he reses mana gun, I click through, and then the other card is Spin Doctor. And he's like, not res the Spin Doctor. And I'm like, this is interesting. My read on this is, oh no, he's really flooded. Because not only did he want to like put something in the remote behind an upgrade, but he needed to be able to like draw up a bunch and discard down 2 cards, which I don't think he would have been able to do on turn 1.
Of course, because of the 6 hand size.
Because of the 6 hand size. So
he doesn't even res that.
So he doesn't res the Spin Doctor, which I don't know about.
But
that's the right decision. But it does mean that he's made me pay the 2 clicks, right? Which I wouldn't have done otherwise. Which are 2 clicks I could have been spent running HQ.
Yeah. But your last click.
But so I think about it and trash the Spin Doctor.
Of course, you know trash 1.
Yeah, because I played Dirty Laundry. So, and then I'm thinking, and I'm going to get this dirty laundry money and then run back and trash it. And then I'm like, hang on a second, I've trashed the spin doctor, and now I can't do that because I don't have clicks to pay through the mana card again. That was silly. So I do something else. And then the following turn, something else goes in the mana gun. He like draws some more, but something else in the mana gun. So I run it, spend 2 clicks, still an agenda. I'm like, okay, yeah, like he still hasn't found any ice, and now I can trash the mana gun. Like he has literally no board. I have 2 points.
Yeah.
And then I fetch compilation and like
I was gonna say
get a Ikora out of his hand, and then I'm 5 points up before he manages to draw ice and start playing the game. At which point I eventually win with I don't know, I can't even
singles.
remember,
Yeah.
single axes or whatever. I break the remote once, I think.
So you're 3-1 after round 2.
So I'm 3-1, feeling good,
good.
and also having like really nice time playing with like nice opponents. Really enjoying that. I can't remember when we had the lunch break, but somewhere around round 2 or 3 we had lunch break. I had some food. It was fine.
Round 3 playing against Stephen.
Round 3 I played against Stephen, which is another fun one. Before we started playing, because get chatting up with Stephen, and then after a while he says to me, "Did you used to play the Game of Thrones card game?" I was like, "Yeah, man, yeah. I'm staying with Game of Thrones players this weekend."
Yeah.
And it turns out that Stephen and I had met, but not seen each other for something like 8 years.
Were you paired up in Swiss at some Game of Thrones tournament?
We were both in at the Game of Thrones tournament, the tournament of Starlek, the annual Game of Thrones tournament in a castle in Germany, which is renowned for being a great time. And I go every year, but I don't play the Thrones anymore. I just go to see friends. And we were both there 1 or 2 years together, and we may have both been on Team Scotland one year.
Okay.
We couldn't figure out, because the year that the Brexit referendum happened, I sort of jokingly talked to my Scottish friends and was like, "Can I defect to because I don't want to be an Englishman in the year of Brexit?" And they allowed me to, so I was on Team Scotland one year.
Very nice.
For a laugh. And Stephen was around that year, I think, or maybe the previous year. But anyway, he knows Tony and Helen, who I was staying with. He knows other friends of mine. And yeah, we had met years ago. So it was nice to realise that connection and have a good chat. And also nice to hear that he was just coming back to Netrunner, like literally after the best part of a decade.
Oh, wow.
This was his like first tournament back in a really long time. And he was really enjoying it. So that was really cool.
And he's playing Prav and Seb.
And he's playing Prav and Seb. So Prav is Prav. It does some...
Was it Traps Prav?
Not really. He's got Vlad grids. He's got ice walls. There was like a 7-strength ice wall in the game because of Prav.
Takobi, I guess.
But yeah, Takobi got me through. And because he's playing a scoring MBN deck in this meta, his agenda suite is not very good.
Yeah,
it's just a bunch of 2-pointers. So I just kept finding agendas in places and won the game. That was fairly straightforward. And then Seb. But when we switched to the Seb game, I get out the Asmari deck, and he goes, "Oh, okay." And I'm like, "What's that?" And he had just played against Jono, who in the previous round, which was his first time ever seeing the deck.
Yeah.
And Jono would kill them on turn 4 or whatever, and he'd be like, "Wow, okay." And so this time he has a bit more of an idea of what it's going to be going into it. He almost cracks my remote in time with 2 crews.
Nice, yeah.
But he doesn't quite have the money required and everything to do it. So I kill him from the remote. But
and I'm sure he's very grateful that we made that deck. And
But what he said was, after the games, I was like, how are you feeling about the tournament? You having a good time? And he was like, "Yeah, it's really, I love the game. It's reminding me how much I love the game, and it's really fun to see people's decks like do wild and fun things and go off." And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess my 2 decks did just do that to you." So that's good. Like it was nice, really, really nice round. A good chat.
Round 4, you played Nikki.
Before I played Nikki, yeah.
Who I think is one of, if not the only, person to be doing all 6 regionals.
Yeah, well-travelled Nikki, whose flight in on Friday night was really delayed.
Oh.
And their accommodation ended up being kind of shit that they booked an Airbnb. So like,
but you're both 5-1 at this point. So Nikki's doing well.
Great time, but Nikki's doing well. Yeah,
nice.
And feeling good about it. And Nikki asks me at the start of the round if I want to ID. The thing I didn't mention about the previous rounds is that in round 2 and round 3 I was paired down.
Okay.
Just by coincidence. So I have like what I'm expecting to be quite bad certainly schedule. If I end up trying to fight for the bubble, I'm gonna miss. So I've lost 1 game, so I can't lose more than 1 more game. So I'm like, I need to sweep one of these 2 rounds. Also, I like Nikki very much, and we're friends, so I thought like, hey, let's play. I'd rather play now, and then I have more information about whether or not I'm able to ID or have to 2-for-1 next round.
Yeah. Makes sense to do.
And B, I get to play some fun games with Nikki.
Yeah.
So Nikki's playing Sable and Asa group. The Sable game I don't really remember very well. I killed with the combo. I think I can't remember if this actually happened or I was just thinking that I had outs against Class Act.
Okay.
But like,
But you could have done it through Class
because Act. Because of Nero Spike, if Nikki had installed Class Act on the last turn, I could have still killed the re-education Nero Spike. That might have actually in fact happened.
Okay.
I just don't remember. I certainly thought about it.
And then after
that was fairly straightforward. It was one of those games against Criminal where you have to like just push aggressively.
Yeah.
And get doofed because I didn't draw enough ice to put it against doof anyway. So that was that.
Doof keeps their money. It doesn't do a massive tempo.
Right, because you get the Osmara trigger, right? So it's like you're losing a lot less. The Asa game was an interesting one. It was like, so these are the 2 decks Nikki's been playing for the whole original season.
Yeah.
So they know
I played against Nikki at all 3 of the originals I've been
really?
to.
Great. Oh, I stood in for you this time.
Yeah.
So there were quite quickly like 2 track remotes, fully operationals getting played. But after the first fully operational, I was actually able to like contain the econ a little bit.
Okay.
I managed to like pinhole cups one of the tranks and like slow things down a little bit. And I managed to get to every wage workers that turned up, which is important because as with wage workers, is like 5-click Corp, which is like really hard to keep up with, and can be a real problem. In the process of all of that, we're both finding agendas, and I think we end up on Nikki's 4 points to my 4. I think going towards the end of the game. And I was starting to get Cataloger running. I'd looked for Cataloger and like whiffed, I think, on the first one. But I was ready to like try and really close the game with Cataloger because we were getting quite close to time because of all the like positioning in the early game about fighting over wage workers and stuff. The game taking quite a long time, and it wasn't the quickest as Mario game because again, doof criminals slows you down a bit. So as we were starting to get close to time, I've seen like the Audacity on the cataloger and some other stuff,
Right.
and I've got a compilation in play. Like I can dick HQ at any time.
Okay.
So I'm feeling pretty good about my ability to like find an agenda and at least stop Nikki from scoring one on my following turn. And then Nikki does a bunch of math, and I'm looking at Nikki has like 8 credits or something, and no tranks installed at this point. And I'm looking like there's no way you can score Ikawa, right? But I haven't actually checked to do the math. And Nikki starts their turn, does a bunch of math, and then goes, "I think I've got it."
Oh no!
And goes like, what they do is they loop in a fully operational into a biotic turn with a wage workers in play, so that they can play 3 operations, fully operational, biotic, and Audacity, to try and score an Ikawa. And they're installing stuff as well. Unfortunately, they get several clicks into this turn with a double advanced card on the table. And then we both look at each other and like, you've got 1 click left, and you're going to play Audacity, and this card's going to go to 4 advancements.
No.
And I'm like, is that Ikawa? And they're like, yeah. And they just got their math slightly wrong because managing multiple wage workers triggers in the same turn is like a nightmare. And it was at the end of like a hard, difficult game. So in the end, and like on my turn, I had Cataloger and compilation ready. Like I would very likely have found enough points to win on time anyway.
Sure.
Like the game wasn't thrown entirely by that. But it just meant I just had to win on mine and steal the Ikawa back.
Yeah, I can imagine them feeling a little rough about that. But,
so they weren't, and I felt a little bit rude for like denying the ID and making Nikki play like 2 quite stressful games of Netrunner. Sorry, Nikki. But you know, Nikki's great. We get on really well, so we had a good chat. And in the end, they came and stayed with Tanya and Helen rather than stay at their shitty accommodation again on Saturday night. So I was sort of able to make it up to them by offering my friend's house as a place to stay. So that worked out okay. And we got to hang out in the evening, which is nice. So yeah.
Round 5 UAD?
Round 5, I get paired with Rose Kolodny, who is also from Dundee, and who is somebody I met at the Nottingham Regional.
Yes.
And we also played in round 5 there.
I remember I watched that one.
I not round 5 because it was single sided, so it would be round 7.
Yeah.
And I won that game of Lat versus Outfit, which is really tight and fun game. And then, as a result of me winning that game, Rose missed the cut and I bubbled. So it was bad for both of us.
Yeah.
But we had a fun game and it was nice to meet them at that tournament. And then this tournament, here we are in the last round, and we're looking at the math, and like I'm top of Swiss, having gone X and 1. I can definitely ID. The only person who can catch me on points is Augustus if he sweeps his last round.
Okay.
And Rose has a draw and is 2 points behind me or something. Yeah, 2 points behind me because she's lost one draw and won the rest. And so we do the ID math together, and then she does something which is very clever, which is double checks how ID math both with a friend and with a judge, as well as with me, her opponent, because I'm her opponent.
We've got the triple lock. We've got the.
And so, like, she makes sure it's all okay, and then she agrees to ID, and we're both logged in for the cut, like guaranteed.
Is there a long changeover before the cut, or do you get straight into it?
Well, one thing I want to mention about the last round is that as I'm coming around, so Rose is in the fixed seating near the judges' table.
Yeah.
So I'm coming around to sit down there, and the person leading that seat, I believe, was Dan. Dan, known as Strong Goose online, who people may know from judging at Worlds and UK Nats and other things in previous years. Really lovely. I don't know Dan that well, but we've chatted a bit of tournaments and what have you. And Dan is just leaving, and Dan, as I'm arriving at the table, Dan is looking at his phone, sees the pairing, sees he's paired against Augustus Caesar the last round, and he says, "Oh, well, that's me. Augustus is so good. That's it. I'm done." And I sort of say to him, "Hey, listen, it's so statistically unlikely for Augustus to win so many tournaments in a row, like make so many cuts this year.
Not due.
At some point, his streak's got to stop. It could be you, my guy. It could be you who beats."
And he does.
And so their games go long, like right to time, and then with a tense last turn from what I can tell. And I'm sort of like going back and forth, getting drinks and stuff, like relaxing, preparing myself for the cut. And occasionally looking over, trying to figure out who's winning. I don't know who's won the first game, but their second game is going really long. In the end, Dan has swept Augustus.
Wow.
I go over to him, give him a little shoulder bump, like, "Hey, man,
Congrats.
well done." But I wanted to just shout out Augustus, because when I was thinking about this afterwards, it's wild. The season Augustus has had is unbelievable. Like, so many top finishes in the past year and a half. Like, in many of the years that Netrunner has existed, he would be an easy bookie's favourite to win Worlds. And he just happens to have done it at the time when soccer has won 6 nationals and 2 Worlds, and another player, our anonymous friend, has won the EMEA, the biggest tournament of the ESFR, and is the circuit breaker. And won a bunch of other stuff. Like, 3 of the hottest streaks of all time are happening this year. And then it's nuts.
You add on to that any given tournament that the 3 of them are like in the cut for, Jai is also liable to be in the cut, and he might just win it.
Yeah.
So it's like he obviously doesn't have the same like streaks. He doesn't get to play in as many tournaments.
Right.
But if he's there, you're like, well, it's a 4-horse race. Could be.
So I was thinking about all this on the train home, being like, man, it's gonna be sweet. Worlds. The like end of this arc of the story play out.
That'll be really cool.
Yeah, it is going to be fun. But anyway, unlucky Augustus, you didn't get to cut this one. But you did get a playmat, I believe. Yeah, because
I would have already have had one, but yeah.
Yeah, top 8. Yeah, it was top 8 mats and top 4
Yeah.
cut. So some people got playmats who didn't make the cut, which is kind of a nice consolation anyway. Speaking of prizes, I did the amusing thing of like bringing the prizes to a tournament, then finishing top of Swiss and declining all the prizes because I'm one of the regional organisers. So I'm getting a playmat for judging next week, so I donated my playmat, which I believe is now Roland's gonna take it to hand it off to the northeast, the like growing northeast Newcastle meta. Which I think is really appropriate given that it has the Angel of the North on it.
It makes sense.
And that's a like growing community in the UK at the moment, so that's really cool. I was glad about that. But the prizes they laid on in addition were really great. Like they have a great the prize vault thing.
I saw a photo of it.
Yeah, there are a bunch of like old and like quite unique playmats and alt arts and stuff. I got a playset of fairies, a fairy alt, like an NSG fairy alt art that I'd never seen before. That was like seems.
You play some
Pretty cool.
Eternal? Is that
Yeah, I
right?
play some Eternal. I've got classic decks built.
Yeah,
I've got use for fairies, and I love fairy. Fairy was a big card for me back in the day. Actually, playing Shaper with Revolver now is kind of going back to my roots. I used to play a lot of Fairy Shaper back in the day, which is silly.
What did you play in the cup? You played 3 rounds in the cup.
3 rounds on the cut, yeah. So anything else I need to say about the cut? Not really. Before we start, I guess. Yeah,
You
we
played
just started
Ian
playing.
round 1?
Yes, Ian, who was, he said as we sat down, he just got off the phone to his kid, because he wasn't expecting to make the cut, and had to then apologise for missing bedtime. Oh, like, bless. That's very sweet. I'm sorry to be keeping you from your child at this time, especially since I'm playing as Mari.
Let me just quickly have Mari kill you.
Let me just kill you, yeah. So, yeah, that was a fairly quick Asmari versus Essa game. At one point, Ian went for the stealing Degree Mill out of archives, shuffling Mara back into the deck play.
Okay.
And I was like, I mean, he presumably knew that doing that would put him dead to punitive. But he made the call, basically, because I had him dead on the remote anyway. And he tried to do that and then find some points on RD.
Sure.
To try and close. Didn't get there. And I didn't have punitive, but I did kill him in the remote, so that was...
the classic Degrimo doesn't have defensive text.
It was like, and it was like re-education bottom 2 cards, because you only have 2 cards. Don't mess up the thing about re-education where if you put too many cards, you don't kill them.
Yeah.
And then due to that, closes the game. So,
although in this instance, if you had Neurospike, you could have killed with 2 cards in hand.
yeah.
Even if you hadn't shuffled any back.
Yeah, I could have killed with having had no other cards in my own if I wanted to, yeah. But yeah, no, it was just an Asmari game.
Just a quick Asmari game.
Yeah.
And then you get paired against Dan, who's the Swept Augustus.
Yeah,
and is playing Miramorph.
Yeah, so Dan Swept Augustus has won his game in the first round of the top 4, so we get to play. And then, spoiler alert, I win this first game, Dan wins in the losers final, and then plays me again in the final.
Yeah,
so we play 2 games. From my perspective, we play 2 games in a row.
Yeah.
Dan has a game in between. So I'm playing into Dan's Miramorph deck, which we had a coin toss for which of us would play what side, because we both Corped in the first round, and Dan won the toss to play Corp, so he was playing his Miramorph deck, which is a deck he's been working on for quite a long time. I believe he played it at Max last year.
You're playing an incredibly fast deck, and he's playing for the meta very slow deck.
Yeah. But the Miramorph had done quite well on the day, I believe.
I can believe it.
And it's the interesting thing from my perspective is it's quite similar to a deck that our teammate Frydan
was
playing a lot of. We worked on for a bit in the last meta. I think it was before RWR.
It was, and then just after the cards came out, we kind of kept trying to work on it for a bit.
Yes, because active policing was an interesting card.
Yeah.
But the basic principle is it's MCA. Right. So the idea is, by default, the Corp has 3 actions and the runner has 4. When you're playing MCA, Miramorph, the reverse is true.
Yeah.
And that's kind of powerful and cool. And yeah, interesting that Dan had come to a lot of the same conclusions as Frydan had. Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe Frydan at some point just looked at Dan's list, and that's why that's true.
Yeah,
because he's been playing it since last autumn, I think.
Yeah.
But it had the what I believe is the best agenda suite for that deck, which is 3 Echoa, 3 Vitruvius, 1 Luminol, 1 Send a Message. So you have 5 2s you can advance with MCA, and 3 2s you can fast advance with Audacity. It has an Audacity in it. And also, if you don't draw a 5-3, you can over advance a Luminol with your a Vitruvius with your MCA, and then have a bunch of options for stuff to bring back and make the game really difficult. But this is cut, right? So it's open deck list. So looking at Dan's deck list, there's a bunch of 1-ups in there, which is always a bit annoying to see in a matchup you're not familiar with. But it's like, man, how am I going to play around all these? But there is something that I noticed, which is there's 2 Warrior Tracker in the deck. Warrior Tracker is a card that has been used in MCA decks in the past, and other Prana Condenser decks, other decks that are trying to protect a single asset. But I have Copulation. And so I'm looking at that and I'm like, okay, I have a strategy here. And it's Copulation, the Warrior Tracker. That's going to be my strategy for the game.
It's not Copulation, the MCA?
Because my logic is, if he establishes a Warrior remote that he can just keep putting stuff into, at some point I'm going to have to deal with that. And my deck is not, I have 1 link, but I'm not set up very well to deal with Warrior. The way I have the deck built these days, I don't have very many installables lying around.
Yeah.
Apart from the occasional stone ship to trash to it.
Or an empty propeller or something.
Yeah. And I don't have a lot of raw cash to be like repeatedly playing those traces on top of breaking a bunch of ice, which I'm going to have to do in the matchup.
Yeah.
So my logic is I need to go into this matchup not allowing Warroid MCA to happen at all if I can allow it. If I can avoid it, sorry, because that means that I'm going to have to deal with that and on a turn where I have 3 clicks, right? Because MCA has happened, which is difficult to do. And again, it's an interesting twist on the matchup, right? The lat HB matchup, because as Shaper in my experience against HB, generally your game plan is I'm not worried about any of their econ. I'm not worried about any of their like other development cards. The only things I care about are Managon Void and agendas. Like I'm just trying to pinhole the Managons and the Voids and access the agendas. I don't care about anything else.
Makes sense.
And obviously I need to be able to deal with the ice in order to do that. But that's how I play the PD matchup. That's how I largely play the ISO matchup against Nikki, although Wage Worker's complicated.
Yeah.
And then but MCA changes that because MCA is a non-agenda card they can put in the remote that attacks my resources, removing my clicks, and so I do actually need to deal with that because in some ways Lat is kind of quite resource poor. It's weird to say for like the best runner deck in the meta, but like you don't have Crowfee. I think it was Crowfee did a really good 419 write-up recently. And then NPC winning deck. But they go into like a bunch of like principles for building a reg runner deck, and one of the things they talk about is like fast econ versus slow econ, right? Like stuff that's gonna like give you value over time versus stuff that like just gives you money now and fairly unconditionally. Lat has basically no slow econ.
Yeah, it's like, all just
right. Like Bridgman's deck with the Aesop's package, like you can play a bit of a longer game in that way. You have some ongoing value. Lat just doesn't have that. The point of the deck is to play econ when you need it and just interact with the Corp a bunch and win the game by playing good network, right? It's a fun deck.
Yeah, that makes sense.
When the Corp is doing something that attacks your resources directly, you have to be really proactive about stopping them from doing that. Because if they take too many resources against you, even if that resource is clicked, which is the one you in theory have more infinite of, you're going to start to lose the game because you're just going to run out of stuff that is powering your interaction.
So how long did your game go? Was it?
So it was a long game at the time. Basically the whole first part of the game is me like fucking around with his econ and his Warroids. So I get the compilation out early, and I think I compilationed the Warroid tracker 3 times in the game, even though he has 2 copies.
And you've got 1 copy of compilation.
So the first time I like get a Warroid off it on a pinhole, and then I'm able to challenge the Charlotte remote. He's got a Charlotte in his deck,
I've seen it.
which the Charlotte is like sweet in the remote because
Makes
it's, like,
sense.
it gives you a way to like use one of the actions that you wouldn't otherwise be using that much every turn, advance, and generate value from that, which is really cool. So I'm able to get rid of the Charlotte as a result of cupping the Warroid. And then I track the cups to access HQ, and I whiff, but I get to reinstall the cups and go and get another Warroid. And then he plays Restore to bring the Warroid back, and then I have the third pinhole. And playing 3 pinholes is really good, as it turns out. During one of those, he does assemble, I think it's the last time, I think he does the Restore for Warroid, install MCA, click MCA for a turn, which is like a pretty good turn. But he's still not got a ton of money. So I'm able to, even though I only have 3 clicks, pinhole, take the Warroid, get into the remote, and get rid of the MCA. Which I was pleased I was able, like positioning myself well to be able to do that. Eventually, he's managed to score some points here and there, and he, I think he just audacity'd in the middle of the game.
Just to get some points on the board.
I might be misremembering that. Yeah. Anyway. He's got a Vitruvius with a counter at some point.
Sure.
And I think he has to use the counter for econ at one point, which feels good to me.
Yeah.
It was a YDL though, so he didn't make much money from it.
Sure.
But at some point he's like established that he's got 2 points up on me, and then he's got a Regolith going. And I'm like, okay, there's a Regolith going. I'm out of pinholes, so I'm not going to worry about dealing with that Regolith. I'm just going to breathe, take a turn to like make a bunch of value. And my falsifiers were really good in this game, incidentally. Like
I was going to say that's very funny.
But then it gets back to his turn. He clears the Regolith. Maybe another turn goes past, but shortly after clearing the Regolith, he's pushing something in the remote, and time is called. And so it's like an advanced card in the remote, but he's 2 points up on me. I have no points. I haven't found it.
Wow.
and I have cataloger and breakers, and like I'm pretty well set up. So my turn is a stupid shaper turn, which admittedly using a criminal card. I play falsified, naming asset on the thing in the remote because I think it's probably an asset. Like he installed it before time was actually called, so it could be an MCA, it could be a Rashida, whatever. It's 3/2. It's an agenda.
Okay.
So then I trick shot.
Resolving the catalogue.
Right, break into R&D for a bunch. I have to like manually break a Bran at some point because there's a Bran on R&D and I haven't been able to pick up Takobi counters. So I've broken the Bran with trick shot money and a bunch of my own money with Cleaver, so like 8 credits or whatever.
Yeah.
Manually. Broken the ice behind it, catalogued, seen another agenda. So I put that agenda back on top. Oh, and actually, before I do that, I even forgot about it when I was explaining. I really almost forget to, but I remember just in time before he shows me the 4 cards to charge my catalogue with Stoneship because I've already used it once.
Oh yeah, so you do it before you click to access.
Because otherwise it goes away.
Okay.
So I still have 1 counter on my catalogue as a result of making it play. See the on the top. Trick shot takes me to the remote. Because I have Takobi counters now from breaking RD, I can break into the remote and I get more Takobi counters in the event that I need to make any more ones. But I managed to steal that agenda and then with my last click,
2 points off the top.
Take the 2 points off the top.
Nice.
42 when I went attack.
Wow.
Which was sweet as hell. And I was really pleased about how I navigated that game in the early stages to like make sure it wasn't getting out of control.
Yeah.
And like secretly very grateful to Frydan for giving me a bunch of practice even though it was months ago.
Yeah.
I have an idea of
like
how bad it can be when they get up and running, right? So yeah, I felt good about that. But Dan played it really well. His deck is really cool. And he's been playing it for a long time, so yeah, it was an interesting and fun game. And
then you're in the finals?
And then I'm in the finals. So Dan plays Kit into Ian's Acid Sports deck, which is playing 3 ping. He's got a good write-up for that at the moment, which I recommend. Yeah, that game, I think Ian just doesn't draw the agendas he needs to in time, so Kit gets on top of him and Kit wins the game. And now Dan's playing Kit into my Ismari.
Yep.
Finals. The finals, 25 clicks are played in this game. And I believe I know them all. So we can go click by click.
Let's go click by click.
And then go and drink some water.
So you can do in one single breath everything.
So turn 1, I push Rashida behind ping. Sorry.
Rashida ping and your 3rd click. Go on, Ryan.
Probably it's draw. Usually it's drawing.
Yeah. Because you want to wide it out.
Yeah, it's definitely not anything that like does anything to the board.
Yeah.
And then Dan thinks for a while. He's looking at my deck list a lot. He thinks for a while, and I've named event. And he's sort of, one of the things he's thinking about is whether or not to give me the 2 credits. Right?
Yeah.
And what he goes for, which is a really interesting line, I think, is install Stoneship, install Telework, Trick Shot. So he's installed 2 cards so he can steal Degree Mill if he wants to.
Yeah.
And those are both cards that are going to be useful for him later in the game. So I kind of like this line. I do wonder if he does steal Degree Mill, how risky is that? Like, it could definitely just be dead to punitive. But also, it's turn 1 of the game.
If you're going to do it.
I put in my write-up for the Asmari deck that one of the reasons Degree Mill is good is that it makes it harder to steal points on turn 1.
Yeah.
Because one of the ways you lose the game is they steal on turn 1, which is the turn when you're least prepared to punitive them. And then later in the game, they find another agenda and crack the remote and they win without risk of punitive. Which is how Motion Blur beat me at Nottingham.
Yeah.
So Degree Mill usually helps with that. So Dan plays around that possibility, basically. And as it turns out, I think I had 1 punitive in hand at the time and not a ton of money. Anyway, so he
trick shots, sees
2, doesn't steal. In fact, he sees 2, and they're both Hollow Man. He trashes them up.
Wow. Okay.
so that's a bit like, okay, that's going to affect my options in this game.
Yeah.
And then he thinks for a while about whether to run the remote because he knows, as many players do by now, that like forcing reses on the remote is good. The Asmari deck isn't made of money all the time, and it's good to like, make them spend that money. Again, this is part of the reason why I like the Ice Suite changes, just because of the way people are playing against the deck at the moment. Because we have Mr. Chesso and FCP, our face checks are a bit mean.
Yeah, like
they cost the face checks cost you credits.
All 3 of those things are going to do something to him, right?
But what he's basically thinking is, if it's ping, that's kind of bad, and he says this out loud. And he has an answer for a while, and then he goes for it. It is ping, and he has to clear the tag last click because he's installed 2 resources on his first click. So I draw with Rashida, and my hand. I have a 9-card hand, and it is. Sorry, I know all the cards because they're all relevant, hilariously.
That is pretty good.
It is Dupestad, Neurospike, red level clearance, re-education, so a bunch of kill pieces.
Yep.
YDL, punitive, Master Jespo, and ping, I think.
Okay.
So I'm looking at these and I'm like, okay, I have 2 ways to play this game. One of them is try and build a 3 ice remote that might actually keep Kit out. Like it.
Yeah.
There's no remote you can build really with the deck that like actually keeps out Lobosome in.
Yeah.
But you can at least tax them out enough that like they might not be able to afford to break that
Yeah.
soon enough, and you can win it that way. So I've drawn Master Chess for another piece of ice, so like I have an opportunity to like maybe start trying to do that, and I have a YDL, right? So like I could like start making money on doing that. But then I'm doing credit math, and I'm like, okay. As it turns out, I have a different line, which is a line I've never taken before, which would be just install advanced re-education, and then next turn, red level the Dupestad, triple advance kill.
Which would put you on 4 cards in hand?
Yes. So there are 2 problems with this line. One of them is that I need to get an Asmari trigger.
Okay.
For the line to happen.
Yeah.
And the second one is that if he draws up enough, he won't die.
Yeah. He's got Stoneship on the table, right?
He's got Stoneship on the table. But I think about it for a while, and I say, I'm sorry, I have a line I've never had before, and I need to think about this. And Dan's like, you should play it.
Yeah.
And so sort of for a laugh, but also because I've sort of made up my mind.
In the final, sort of for a laugh.
I'm like, I'll just install this re-education. Because the logic is this. If he touches this re-education, he's just dead. Like he can't go his turn on 2 credits and 2 cards with a telework and a Stoneship in play, but even then he has to like either play or draw into Spark, play Spark, break a ping, steal. Like he's going to be ending on few enough credits or cards. He just doesn't have enough clicks to get up to like 6 cards
and he doesn't know to play around the. Well, he might know to play around the RLC, but it's kind of hard to spot.
Right. So if he runs this, he's just dead, even though it's quite vulnerable behind just a ping, because I have both pingtips and a YDL. On the other hand, if he doesn't run it, but gives me the Asmari trigger, and I go for it, and he gets to use his Stoneship, then I've forced him to use his Stoneship, and he still has to like try and crack the remote and then survive punitive.
Yeah, you've got the 5 advancement on the table.
Right. And I don't have to commit to paying for the Dupestad because of the way timing works, so I'll still have enough money to throw in punitive after that. And then the third option is he doesn't give me the Asmari trigger at all, and I can't actually kill him, and I have to just try and kill him with, like 2 turns later by installing the Dupestad manually. All of these lines are attractive to me because in the kit matchup, if the game goes past turn 5, we are so unfavored. It's crazy. Like they're so good at breaking the remote efficiently. And there's already a Stoneship on the table, so the punitive threat is not going to exist in a couple of turns.
Yeah.
So like basically all of these options that this could turn out all turn out as by turn 4, I've won the game if it's going to work.
Yeah.
And that's what I want. So that's what I go for. So I go for it, and Dan thinks about it for a while, and he looks at my deck list a bunch. And I would actually love to know if you're watching, Dan. Let us know. I forgot to ask you afterwards.
Did you think about the RLC?
Did you realise it was the RLC line? Because he looks at my deck list a bunch, and then after a while he goes, "Okay," in a way that means he thinks he knows what's going on. He's like, I think this isn't going to work. You can't kill me here, and then he like draws a bunch and clicks telework as his turn.
Makes sense. I mean, yeah.
So now he's got 5 cards and 5 credits. He's in a much better position to survive punitive.
And you didn't get your money, and
and I didn't get my money. So I go. I think my turn is draw YDL, install Dupestad.
Yeah.
So because I could install a second ice in front. I think I could because I discarded the 2 ice I had in hand the previous turn. But I draw ice for a turn, so I could like play a second ice. But I think if he's going to spark, it just isn't going to matter. Like I need to play 2. He hasn't drawn spark yet, and he goes draw, hasn't found Spark, plays an Econ event, clicks Taillock. And then I get to, on turn 4, my turn is like advanced re-education, ask for action, and he pops the stone ship. And then I red level so that I can quickly draw up to having 7 cards in hand, and then double advance, score with Jupiter res, put 7 cards under and kill. So red level did actually get me the kill.
And it got you on turn 4?
And it got me on turn 4 rather than on turn 3, which admittedly was a narrow
Hey,
option, but
if you had done the turn 3 kill, I think that would have been...
This was the other reason to play the land, right? Because if I died, it would have been hype as hell.
Very silly. So, well, you played some Netrunner back before NSG things, right? Mm-hmm. Did you ever win a regional?
No, this is the largest tournament I've ever won. The only other Netrunner tournament I've won was the Stevenage Circuit Opener 2022, which was your first tournament
I ever went to.
And which was 10 players. This tournament was 25, so more than doubling my record.
Very nice.
Feels pretty good. I'm pretty happy about it. Yeah, it's like... And also, I won 10 games in a row.
Yeah,
that's kind of wacky. Like when I was starting like 3 or 4 games into the streak, I was like looking around, just feeling so good, just like really in the groove. Like not yet getting cocky. Obviously, I've got cocky out about it in hindsight. But not yet feeling too cocky. Like playing fun games with nice people. Really enjoying my decks. I really love that lap deck. The place up. I feel it's really fun for me. Really suits my playstyle. Really fun. And the Asmari really suits a different part of my brain, which is like just working out weird combo lines, which I really like. And I was just like having a good time, looking cute. My nails match my card sleeves, which is always a nice thing to be able to do. Yeah, just having a grand time, and I just like was felt like I was just in the groove the whole time.
Fantastic.
And 10 games in a row. The only other time I've ever done that is at the team event at Worlds when I was playing Eternal.
When you were playing,
I was playing a runner deck that just like cheat coded Netrunner basically, and it didn't had no chance of losing any games.
Yeah.
And a Corp deck that is one of the most powerful kill decks of all time in any format ever. So yeah, I feel like winning 10 games of like real standard.
Yeah. It's like even more
in a tournament. Admittedly, not as prestigious as Worlds, but
sure.
I felt really good about that, and it just felt like a lot of the work I've done on my mental game over the past year and a bit really paid off. A lot of the work I've done on my like technical game with Shape really paid off, and I got to show that the Asmari deck is like a real deck that like open deck lists, plenty of tech, you're dead. It doesn't matter. But the final, I think, is a really illustrative game for this because in the course of that game, my opponent drew 10 cards. They had 5 cards in hand. They clicked to draw 3 times, and then twice more on the final turn. And then they stone chipped on my turn, but those cards don't count because they were dead by the time they would have been able to use them. So they saw basically 10 cards in their deck that were the cards they had to interact with what I was doing. If you think that playing a one-off Caldera in your deck is going to save you from the priority, how often are you going to draw it in the top 10? Spirit Sides likewise. If you think that, like, you still, even if you're playing multiple pinholes, you need to draw the pinholes, and you need to have enough cards and credits, and like, you need to draw your breakers. In this case,
you didn't use an upgrade this game, right? Or you used you didn't pre-install the Jupiter, but like
right, but and also I had to deal with that Hollow-Man because he trashed your Hollow-Man off.
And you can't.
And I like slow advanced the agenda and killed on turn 4. Like
behind a single resed ping.
Right. I said it in my write-up, so I'm repeating myself slightly, but because since I wrote that write-up, I've watched some VODs of people discussing the deck on their various streams and stuff, and listened to podcasts.
Is you Andre?
I think about Andre and Whiteblade and a few other people who've been talking about this deck lately. I just think, the cards that matter are not Dupestad and Punitive and like Piranhas and the various ones that people have been attacking against specifically. The cards that matter are Rashida, Planogram, Sudden Commandment, and we have 40 cards, and if we assemble 3 of them, you die.
Yeah.
Like, the point of the deck is we're going to draw half our deck by turn 3, and you're going to die if you can't get into this remote, right?
We have the most trapped economy ID ever printed.
Right. The tech is you need to be able to get, like, the best deck against it is actually be kit, have Spark of Inspiration, and like some
Yeah.
and then you're going to get to the remote by turn 3 every time, except in the games where you don't, as we saw in the final. Like, even that deck, which is literally like, it needs to draw 1 card and some money,
Yeah.
and it will win, couldn't do it in time.
Yeah, because it only
With an
drew 10
experienced
cards.
pilot who knew what he was doing, right? Like, in open deck lists, it's like, it's just, it goes fast enough that sometimes you're just going to win. And I cannot emphasize this enough. Just because if that doesn't happen, the deck does nothing for the rest of the game. That does not matter at all. Every click you take after that point where you've lost the game, you may as well concede. Like, there aren't very many net decks where this is true, where you should just concede after your thing hasn't worked.
Yeah.
That comes up a lot more in like Magic. And net players tend not to like decks that feel like that. And that's like, obviously your preferences are fine. You can not like the deck for that reason. But do not write it off for that reason.
Yeah.
Right? If you feel bad because you played an Asmara game where you didn't win and you played like 3 or 4 turns where nothing happened because you couldn't kill them on turn 4, if you're feeling bad about those games, just concede earlier. You'll feel better about the games, and the deck is no worse. Like, it's still doing its thing a high enough percentage of the time, right?
And that's okay.
And against tech and against prepared players, like, the deck's just good enough.
Fantastic. Right. Thank you very much for counters. I think this is probably the longest one of these by like a margin. No, we have. I also played like a lot of Netrunner. I'm gonna not edit anything. I'm gonna go and turn this off.
Great.
Give a big wave.